In a quiet Arizona suburb, the life of a respected police officer took a dark and unimaginable turn when his wife uncovered a horrifying secret. A secret that would unravel their family and lead to a tragedy no one could have anticipated. This wasn't just a story of betrayal. It was a story of fury, desperation, and a mother's chilling choice to protect her child. What happens when the person you trust most becomes the architect of your worst nightmare? How far would someone go to shield their family from an unspeakable truth? This tale explores the limits of trust, the depths of betrayal, and the devastating consequences of secrets that refuse to stay buried. Before we unravel this harrowing story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel here on The Last Confession to stay tuned for more gripping tales that reveal the darkest corners of human behavior. The Mercer family was the picture of stability in their close-knit Arizona suburb. Officer Marcus Mercer, 44, was a respected veteran cop known for his dedication to the community and his unwavering commitment to justice. His wife, Sophia, 40, was a devoted homemaker who managed their household with grace, balancing the demands of her husband's high-pressure career with the care of their only child, Ella. Ella, at 13 years old, was a sweet and creative girl, but she faced significant challenges due to a developmental disability that limited her cognitive and emotional growth. Diagnosed with intellectual developmental disorder as a child, Ella's mind functioned at a level far younger than her chronological age. She relied on routine and her mother's attentive care to navigate the world around her. Despite her limitations, Ella had a vibrant imagination, expressing herself through drawings and stories that reflected her innocent and joyful perspective on life. The Mercers were admired by friends and neighbors as the ideal family. Marcus's reputation as a protector of the community, paired with Sophia's tireless devotion to her family, made them a symbol of resilience and unity. But beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, subtle cracks began to appear. Marcus, once predictable and grounded, started exhibiting erratic behavior. His absences from home grew longer, often without explanation, and he seemed distant even when he was physically present. He had always been a man of few words, but now his silence carried an edge, a tension that made Sophia uneasy. She brushed off her growing concerns, convincing herself that his stress came from the demands of his job. But the cracks were growing wider, and Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. What she didn't know was that these changes were harbingers of a truth so devastating it would shatter the foundation of the family she had worked so hard to hold together. Sophia's unease was becoming impossible to ignore. Marcus, who had always been a devoted father and husband, was acting in ways that made her stomach churn. His presence around their daughter Ella, a sweet 13-year-old with a developmental disability that left her mentally and emotionally much younger than her age, had started to feel unsettling. Ella, blissfully unaware due to her condition, saw her father's attention as nothing more than caring and protective. But Sophia sensed something was off. Marcus had begun spending far more time at home, particularly during his breaks. At first, Sophia thought it was a welcome change from his demanding job as a police officer, but she soon noticed a troubling pattern. He lingered near Ella's room without a clear reason, finding excuses to check on her. His gaze lingered too long when he looked at her. His voice was unusually gentle, almost coaxing, when he spoke to her. These moments, subtle but unmistakable, began to form a disturbing picture in Sophia's mind. Then came the night when Sophia overheard a conversation that left her cold. As she passed Ella's room on the way to bed, she heard Marcus's voice, low and insistent, followed by Ella's childlike, confused tone. "I told you not to talk about this, Ella," Marcus said quietly. "Remember, it's our little secret." Sophia froze in the hallway, her heart racing. Ella's innocent response was almost unintelligible, but the words, "Okay, Daddy," sent chills through Sophia. She felt a growing weight in her chest, a terror she couldn't push away. What secret could they possibly share that Marcus didn't want her to know? The final straw came a few days later when Sophia was cleaning out the laundry. As she sorted through a pile of Marcus's uniforms, something unexpected fell from one of the pockets. It was a small bottle of scented lotion she recognized as one of Ella's favorite kinds. a comforting lavender blend she always kept in her room. Sophia's heart sank as she realized it wasn't just a bottle from the bathroom. It was the bottle from Ella's dresser, one she had bought her just weeks ago. Sophia held the bottle in her trembling hands, trying to make sense of it. Why would Marcus have taken this? Why would it be in his pocket? The implications made her feel physically ill, but she couldn't let herself fully believe it. Was she imagining things? Was she overreacting? But deep down, she knew the truth was darker than she wanted to admit. That night, Sophia sat awake in bed, unable to sleep. Her mind raced with questions, possibilities, and fears. She realized she couldn't keep brushing off these moments as coincidences or misunderstandings. There was something deeply wrong, and she had to protect Ella. Sophia made a silent vow to uncover the truth, no matter how painful or terrifying it might be. She couldn't ignore the signs any longer. Late one night, Sophia woke to find Marcus absent from their bed. Concerned and curious, she got up to investigate. As she moved through the quiet house, she noticed faint sounds coming from Ella's room. Her heart began to race, a sense of unease washing over her. As she quietly approached the slightly ajar door, peering inside, Sophia was confronted with a scene that shattered her world. Marcus's behavior toward Ella was undeniably inappropriate, and Sophia's shock quickly turned to fury. She pushed the door open, her voice trembling as she demanded to know what was happening. Ella, confused and frightened, instinctively moved toward her mother, seeking protection. Sophia immediately shielded her daughter, her maternal instincts taking over as she faced Marcus. Scrambling for an explanation, Marcus began to stammer, offering excuses and justifications that only fueled Sophia's anger. Sophia's disbelief quickly morphed into unwavering resolve. Her trust in Marcus was obliterated, replaced by a fierce determination to protect Ella from further harm. When Marcus, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempted to intimidate Sophia into silence, she met his threats with defiance. Though her world had been irreparably changed, Sophia vowed in that moment to do whatever was necessary to ensure her daughter's safety. Late one night, Sophia stirred awake to find the other side of the bed empty. At first, she thought little of it. Marcus often had restless nights due to the demands of his high-pressure job as a police officer. Yet, as the minutes ticked by and he didn't return, a faint unease began to creep over her. She got up quietly, slipping her robe on as she tiptoed into the hallway. The house was silent, bathed in a soft glow of moonlight streaming through the windows. But as she approached the living room, she noticed something peculiar. Faint noises, barely audible, seemed to be coming from deeper inside the house. She froze for a moment, tilting her head to better catch the sounds. Her heart began to race as she recognized the soft murmurs coming from Ella's room. Confused and uneasy, Sophia walked down the hall, the faint creak of the floorboards under her feet sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. As she drew closer to Ella's door, she could hear the noises more clearly. It was a mixture of muffled voices and soft, indistinct sounds that set off every alarm bell in her mind. She reached the door, which was slightly ajar, and hesitated. Her hand hovered over the knob as her stomach churned with a sense of dread she couldn't yet explain. Pushing the door open just enough to see inside, Sophia's worst fears came to life in an instant. Her husband, the man she had trusted and loved for over 2 decades, was in bed with her 13-year-old daughter. Sophia's mind reeled, unable to process what she was witnessing. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving her struggling to breathe. For a moment, she stood frozen in the doorway, her body trembling as shock and rage collided within her. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, she pushed the door open fully and stormed into the room. "What the hell are you doing?" she yelled, her voice cracking under the weight of her fury and disbelief. Marcus jumped back, startled by her sudden presence. Ella, confused and frightened, looked to her mother, her wide, innocent eyes filled with confusion. Sophia's protective instincts kicked in immediately as she rushed to Ella, pulling her away and shielding her behind her body. Her hands shook as she held her daughter close, her eyes never leaving Marcus. "What is wrong with you?" Sophia shouted, her voice rising with each word. How could you? How could you do this? Marcus, his face a mix of panic and defiance, stammered out excuses. Sophia, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. He began, but the words sounded hollow and insincere. I'm under so much stress. You don't understand. Stress? Sophia interrupted, her voice trembling with fury. You think stress justifies this? You think anything justifies this? Marcus's tone shifted from defensive to threatening as he realized there was no calming Sophia. You need to calm down, he said, his voice low and menacing. You don't want to blow this out of proportion, Sophia. Think about what this could mean for all of us. Sophia felt her anger boil over. Blow this out of proportion? You're telling me to stay silent while you destroy our family? What kind of monster are you? Ella, still clinging to her mother, began to sob quietly, her confusion and fear palpable. Sophia held her tighter, her resolve hardening with every passing second. She glared at Marcus, her disgust and rage etched clearly on her face. I'm not staying silent, she said, her voice steady now, filled with cold determination. You will never come near her again. I swear it. Marcus took a step closer, his tone turning darker. If you try to do anything, Sophia, you'll regret it. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. But Sophia didn't flinch. Her maternal instincts overrode her fear, and in that moment, she made a vow to herself and to Ella. She would protect her daughter at any cost, even if it meant facing the man she once loved as her greatest enemy. The breaking point came one quiet evening, when Sophia heard the unmistakable sound of Marcus's footsteps heading down the hallway. She had been sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her untouched plate of food, her mind swirling with the unrelenting storm of betrayal and fury. Her ears perked up at the faint creak of the floorboards near Ella's room. Her heart began to race, but not with fear this time. It was with cold, calculated resolve. She rose silently from her chair, her movements mechanical as she followed him. As she reached the hallway, she saw him standing outside Ella's door, his hand resting on the knob. Something inside Sophia snapped. Without a word, she turned and walked briskly back to their bedroom. Her hands found the drawer where Marcus kept his service weapon. The cold steel felt heavy in her grip, a weight that matched the depth of her rage. When she returned to the hallway, Marcus had just opened Ella's door. Marcus, she called, her voice eerily calm. He turned, startled by the sight of the gun in her hands. Sophia, he began, raising his hands in mock surrender. Put the gun down. Let's talk about this. Sophia's laugh was hollow, her face a mask of controlled fury. Talk? You want to talk after everything you've done? You think there's anything left to say? Marcus took a cautious step toward her, his tone shifting to one of warning. Think about what you're doing. You don't want to do this. You don't get to tell me what I want anymore, she spat, her hands trembling only slightly as she lifted the gun. You destroyed this family. You destroyed her. And now, I'm going to make sure you never touch her again. Marcus lunged forward, but Sophia was quicker. The first shot rang out, striking him in the shoulder and sending him stumbling back into the hallway wall. He let out a grunt of pain, but Sophia didn't stop. Her finger pulled the trigger again and again, each shot releasing a piece of the fury that had consumed her. The hallway filled with the deafening sound of gunfire, the acrid smell of gunpowder burning her nostrils. By the time Sophia stopped, Marcus lay motionless on the floor, his body riddled with bullets, blood pooling beneath him, seeping into the cracks of the hardwood floor. Sophia's chest heaved as she stared down at what she had done, her mind numb to the carnage around her. She had fired 14 times, each shot a release of the pain and anger that had been building within her for days, weeks, maybe even years. The house was silent now, except for the distant hum of the refrigerator and Sophia's own ragged breathing. She turned toward Ella's room, the gun still clutched tightly in her hand. Ella sat on her bed, her wide, innocent eyes fixed on her mother, uncomprehending but frightened. Sophia's heart twisted painfully as she stepped into the room. It's over, "Baby?" she whispered, her voice cracking as tears streamed down her face. "He can't hurt you anymore." But as she looked at Ella's face, a new wave of despair washed over her. What kind of life would Ella have now? What kind of judgment and cruelty would she face? Sophia's mind spiraled into a dark and twisted logic, convincing herself that there was only one way to truly protect her daughter. "I love you so much," she murmured, raising the gun once more. "I'm so sorry." The sound of the final shot echoed through the house, marking the end of Sophia's tragic descent into darkness. The sound of 15 gunshots shattered the stillness of the night, sending a wave of unease rippling through the quiet Arizona suburb. Neighbors, startled from their sleep, peeked out from their windows, unsure of what they had just heard. Moments later, someone dialed 911, reporting the unmistakable sound of gunfire coming from the Mercer residence. When police arrived, the scene was haunting. Sophia sat in the middle of the living room, her face void of expression, her hands resting limply in her lap. Beside her lay the gun, its barrel still warm, a silent testament to the horror that had unfolded. Blood stained her clothing, a stark contrast to the once pristine home now shadowed by violence. Sophia didn't resist when officers cautiously approached her. "I did it," she said quietly, her voice eerily calm. "I killed them. Both of them." The weight of her confession hung in the air, leaving the responding officers momentarily stunned. It was a scene none of them could have ever anticipated, especially from a family they had known so well. In the hallway, they found Marcus's lifeless body, riddled with bullets, blood pooling beneath him in a gruesome tableau. In Ella's room, they discovered her still form, her face serene, as if untouched by the chaos surrounding her. The sight was enough to send a chill through even the most seasoned investigators. As Sophia was taken into custody, she spoke freely, recounting the events leading up to that night. Her voice remained steady, even as she described the moment she witnessed Marcus's actions toward Ella. Her words painted a picture so horrifying that it left the officers grappling with disbelief and anger. "I had to protect her," Sophia said, her voice breaking for the first time. "He ruined everything. He ruined her." News of the incident spread quickly, the community reeling as the shocking details came to light. Many struggled to reconcile the image of Marcus Mercer, a respected police officer, a pillar of their community, with the man Sophia described. For years, he had been celebrated for his dedication and bravery. Now, his name was synonymous with betrayal and unspeakable acts. Investigators pieced together the grim narrative, uncovering evidence that corroborated Sophia's story. Medical reports and diary entries revealed a pattern of manipulation and abuse that had been hidden behind the facade of a perfect family. The revelations painted Marcus not as the hero many believed him to be, but as a man who had used his power to control and harm those closest to him. As the community grappled with the dual tragedies of abuse and murder, the question of justice loomed large. Sophia's actions, while driven by a desperate need to protect her daughter, left many divided. Was she a villain for taking lives, or a mother pushed to the brink by circumstances too horrifying to endure? The immediate aftermath left the Mercer family as a symbol of shattered trust and the devastating cost of secrets, a haunting reminder that darkness can lurk in even the most respected households. The courtroom was packed as Sophia Mercer's trial began, a case that had captivated not just her small Arizona suburb but the entire nation. Reporters and spectators filled every available seat, eager to witness the legal proceedings that would determine the fate of a mother whose actions had sparked both outrage and sympathy. The prosecution wasted no time presenting their case. They painted Sophia as a woman consumed by premeditated rage, arguing that her access to Marcus's service weapon and the calculated nature of her actions demonstrated intent. They emphasized that she fired 14 times, a chilling number that, in their eyes, underscored the deliberate nature of the crime. The prosecutors recounted the sequence of events, from the initial confrontation to the fatal night, portraying Sophia as someone who had allowed her fury to override reason. They leaned heavily on forensic evidence, noting how Sophia retrieved the weapon, approached Marcus, and fired relentlessly. They also scrutinized her decision to turn the gun on Ella, framing it as an indefensible act of violence that could not be justified, no matter the circumstances. The prosecution's argument was clear. Sophia had crossed a line, and her actions required accountability. The defense, however, told a very different story. Sophia's attorneys presented her as a mother pushed beyond her breaking point by unimaginable betrayal and emotional torment. They recounted her discovery of Marcus's abuse, painting a vivid picture of her mental state as she struggled to process the horrifying truth. Witnesses testified about Sophia's devotion to her daughter and the profound emotional toll the abuse had taken on her. The defense introduced evidence of Marcus's manipulation and long-standing abuse of Ella, arguing that Sophia's actions were a direct response to her desperate need to protect her daughter. They called psychologists to the stand, who described how trauma could drive a person to act irrationally, particularly in situations involving profound betrayal and threats to loved ones. She wasn't just protecting Ella that night, the defense argued. She was trying to reclaim her own sanity in a situation where she felt powerless for far too long. Sophia herself took the stand, her voice trembling as she recounted the years of unease, the night she discovered Marcus's actions, and the suffocating despair that followed. She spoke of her love for Ella, her regret for not seeing the signs sooner, and the overwhelming rage and despair that consumed her. Her testimony brought many in the courtroom to tears, painting her not as a cold-blooded killer but as a broken woman who had reached the limits of her endurance. The jury deliberated for 3 days, grappling with the complex emotions and evidence presented during the trial. When the verdict was finally read, the room was tense with anticipation. Sophia was convicted of manslaughter for Ella's death and second-degree murder for Marcus's. The court acknowledged her emotional stress and the circumstances surrounding the crimes but ruled that her actions could not go without consequence. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. As the judge delivered the sentence, Sophia sat silently, tears streaming down her face. For her, it was not just the end of a trial but the final chapter in a life that had been shattered beyond repair. The courtroom emptied, leaving behind the echoes of a case that had revealed the darkest corners of human behavior and the devastating consequences of betrayal. The aftermath of the Mercer tragedy rippled through the community like a stone dropped into still water, leaving behind confusion, grief, and a host of unanswered questions. In the days following Sophia's sentencing, friends and neighbors struggled to reconcile the family they thought they knew with the horrific reality that had been exposed. The community came together to hold vigils for Ella, her life celebrated amidst tears and shared memories. The sweet, creative young woman who had loved painting and music was mourned as an innocent victim of circumstances beyond her control. Candles flickered in her memory as people whispered prayers and laid flowers near the Mercer home, now a painful symbol of tragedy. The reaction to Marcus's downfall was far more complicated. Once respected as a dedicated police officer and community protector, his name was now synonymous with betrayal and unspeakable acts. The revelations of his abuse shocked those who had admired him, leaving a bitter taste that stained the respect he had once commanded. For some, he became a cautionary example of how power can corrupt and fester in the shadows. Others, struggling to come to terms with the horror, chose to remember the version of him they had known, though their trust had been irreparably broken. Sophia's story sparked deep division among those who knew her. To some, she was a grieving mother who had acted out of love and desperation, pushed to the edge by unbearable betrayal. To others, she was a perpetrator who had taken 2 lives, including her daughter's, in a moment of unthinkable rage. Her sentencing added to the debate. Was it justice? Or was she another victim of the terrible events that had unfolded within her home? As Sophia began serving her sentence, her story gained national attention, becoming the subject of debates about abuse, mental health, and the complexities of familial betrayal. Advocates for domestic abuse survivors saw her as a tragic figure, someone who had been let down by a system that failed to protect her and her daughter. Critics argued that her actions were inexcusable, no matter the circumstances. In the broader conversation, the Mercer family became a grim symbol of how the darkness lurking beneath seemingly perfect lives can erupt into tragedy. Their story served as a cautionary tale, reminding people that appearances often mask hidden struggles and that unchecked emotions, no matter how justified, can lead to devastating consequences. The house where it all happened remained vacant, a stark reminder of the family that had once lived there and the pain that had consumed them. For the community, the Mercers were no longer just neighbors or friends. They were a symbol of the fragility of trust, the power of love, and the unthinkable cost of betrayal. This tragic tale reveals the devastating cost of betrayal, rage, and the fragility of trust. Sophia Mercer's actions were born from a place of love and desperation, but they culminated in a tragedy that can never be undone. It's a chilling reminder of how unchecked secrets and fractured bonds can spiral into irreversible consequences. Could this heartbreaking tragedy have been prevented? What does it teach us about the power of secrets, the importance of open communication, and the limits of endurance? If this story moved you or made you reflect, please subscribe to our channel here on The Last Confession for more tales that delve into the darkest corners of human behavior. Don't forget to like, share, and drop your opinion in the comments section to keep the conversation alive.